well-known Mayavadi. So during the course of the conversation, there was some discussion on the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, and of course this woman was espousing her guru's ideas of what the Bhagavad Gita actually meant. And especially there was one interpretation of Krishna, what Krishna meant. So of course in Sanskrit the word Krishna means dark. So this man had written in his commentary that Krishna means dark, dark means unknown, so the absolute is the unknowable, supreme, unmanifest, like this. It was a Mayavadi interpretation. So Prabhupada very quickly fired back that he said, well, if dark means unknown, if Krishna is unknown, then if he does not know Krishna, then why is he commenting on the Bhagavad Gita, which is Krishna's words? And he said that actually to the devotee, Krishna says, to the devotee, I am known. So he said, therefore this man, because he's not a devotee, he cannot know Krishna, and only the devotees can actually comment on the Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada was very expert. He could pick out the flaw in anybody's argument immediately. And of course in India you always got a lot of this kind of, you know, different kinds of interpretations and, you know, false ideas and misconstruing, you know, the words of the Bhagavad Gita. But Prabhupada was very expert on keeping a person focused that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
When Prabhupada came to Gainesville in 1971, at the end of July, a wonderful visit. He was being interviewed. He arrived, he sat on the vyasam we'd made for him, and he gave a beautiful lecture. Then he was taking questions. There was one girl there, I guess that was 1971, but at that time she was a young girl. And in a somewhat challenging tone, she said to Prabhupada, I see that you have mostly young people here. Why is that? So Prabhupada immediately shot back, why do you have mostly young people in your university? And she was so much caught off guard, I remember she actually dropped her pencil. And she sort of, you know, groped for an answer, stuttering, and said, well, that's the age of education. He said, yes, therefore that is the age of Krishna consciousness. Another such exchange like that, where a few days before I took sannyas, Prabhupada was being interviewed by a reporter in his quarters in LA, and he knew something about Hinduism. He said, well, isn't it in India that old people take sannyas? Why are you giving sannyas to young people? So Prabhupada shot back, what does it mean to be old? The man had no answer. Prabhupada said, old means about to die. Can you say that I'm older than you? Can you say that you're not going to die before me? Can you say? And he couldn't answer that. He said, therefore we are giving them sannyas.
I was cleaning the temple room in Lajpat Nagar, and this one old gentleman came, and he was paying obeisances to the deities, and he said, Krishna Guruvayurappa. This Guruvayur is a deity in South India, in Kerala, and only Keralites and South Indians, they call the deity by that particular name and the accent. So I went to him and I asked him, are you from Kerala? He said, yes. And then we started talking in his language. My language is Tamil, that is Malayalam. So while we were talking, and he found out that, you know, I am initiated by Prabhupada and all that. So he said, I want to become a disciple of Swami Prabhupada. And I have asked year before, and they told me that I have to be 6 months, you know, serving in the temple. And he lifted his dhoti and showed me his leg. It was swollen up with water. And he was about above 60 years old. He said, I was a railway officer, I retired, and I have big problem with my legs, and I cannot do those things that they are saying, And they said, if you cannot do, then you cannot become his disciple. So can you please do something, tell Prabhupada so that he will accept me as his disciple. So I said, I am just become disciple, and the system is the temple president has to give you recommendation. And if the temple president has told you this, then there is no question of, me doing something about that. But then I said, but you can do one thing, you can just go to Prabhupada himself and ask him. These are rules set by Prabhupada, but if he wants, he can do anything. So you may go and see him. He sees people every evening. So he said, anybody can go. I said, well, it's free darshan, everybody is going. You come tomorrow and see him. Come early, so you'll be the first person. And I told him, you bring something for him. You bring a plate with some cloth, some coconut, some flowers, some sweets, and some dakshina. And you bring in, give it to him. That's our tradition. You know, you're from Kerala. So he said, yes, I'll do it. Next day, he came with a big plate covered by a cloth, and it was only like 4 o'clock. Prabhupada starts giving darshan at around 5. And I told him, you wait here, they will tell, and they will come. Then just about 10-15 minutes later, Harisuri Prabhu looked down and he said, if anyone is there, they can come for darshan. And he was the only person. So I said, look, you're so fortunate. There's nobody. Now you just get up and go there. And he was shivering. He was saying, well, let somebody come. I said, this you don't do. You want to get something done which is not normal. So you must be there as quick as possible and get your thing done. So he got up and I came with him. He came, he put the plate on Prabhupada's desk, and Prabhupada looked at him like this and said, yes. So this man, he was all like emotional, and he had a bead bag and a bead on top of that plate, and he was holding that like this, and he said, Prabhupada, I want to chant Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada smiled at him and said, so who is stopping you? He said, Prabhupada, I want to chant Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada said, is that your bag? He said, yes. Prabhupada took that. And he said, do you know how to chant Hare Krishna? So he said, I know the mantra. And he said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Prabhupada said, yes. Took the bead out. And he did like this. Comes to the head bead. And he said, you start like this. And he said, and every bead you chant the whole mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And Prabhupada went to the next bead and went to the next bead, and he chanted a whole round. Just like this. And he said, now you chant, like he usually does when he gives the initiation. And I was so blissful, I thought this man is initiated without having to sweep the floor for 6 months, etc. He could have never done it because he would die if he does that. He's got like a glass bottle like leg with water. How can he ever do anything like that? So I met this, I went to meet this man after some time. After traveling somewhere else, I came back, I met this man, he was still chanting, and he's got a big picture of Prabhupada in his room. The second time when I went to meet him, he was gone. And they said to me that they couldn't take the bead off his hand. And he just chanted. In last 2-3 weeks of his life, he just chanted and he didn't do anything else. And the last week, he didn't even go to the bathroom or anything. He was just one place looking at Prabhupada's picture and chanting. And the last thing they have heard was his chanting in his mouth, and then he left.
Prabhupada sometimes would joke as we entered his room, because obviously it's a very important thing when you would go into Prabhupada's room. It was I always considered it to be the most important event to go to before Prabhupada. So often I would come into his room very, very seriously, and he would sometimes sort of joke One time I came into his room in that very serious mood, and he looked up to me, looked up at me and said with mock seriousness, "Yes, what is your message?" Another time I came to his room in New York, and he was just finishing his breakfast. He was in a very jolly mood, and I was on a college preaching tour, and he said, "Oh, Hridayananda Maharaj." He said, "You were actually traveling and preaching. I'm just here eating."